Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dmitry Kirchev. I'm your host for Trading Patterns. With me is the co-host, Mr. Nikolai Stoykov. Hello, Mr. Stoykov.
Hello, Mr. Kirchev, and hello to our lovely audience.
Right, so this week's episode, number 14, we're going to be discussing fine elements. We covered gross elements so far.
Right.
How do you differentiate fine elements from gross elements, Mr. Stoykov? And what do you mean by fine elements?
I know. I have to be honest with the audience. This is probably one of the the episodes that I have thought the most. So this has been probably 9 months since our recording of gross elements, and I've been thinking about fine elements and the essence of it. So there's been quite a bit of thinking about this, and yes, fine elements is I guess fine elements is everything else that's gross elements is not. So to a degree, finding a balance is a matter of physiology, something that you need to kind of balance, like you sleep, what you eat, kind of like how much you I don't know, listen to music, watch TV, something that's easy to calculate or easy to see and play statistics with. Fine elements is something that it avoids kind of accountability very easy. The only way to know or to see if you actually have balanced the fine elements is your productivity. So in the sense that like the things that actually do, the things that actually happen to you. So gross elements is something that's logical. It could easily spot it, maybe to a degree, I guess, ascertained. So if somebody doesn't sleep well, this person needs to sleep better until sleep improves. A little could be done. Fine elements is something that it's totally within, and it's a function of your perception and your point of view. And that's very difficult for others and even for the people that is observing things to ascertain what their point of view is. So I guess fine elements is what determines your point of view. Gross elements is something that's there and helps you kind of like go there. But fine element, I would describe it as this: like gross elements give you the glasses, but fine elements is your decision to put those glasses. And yes, it's a very, as I said, like, it's probably the hardest thing I've ever tried to kind of understand in my life. It's taken me 9 months almost. Not quite sure I'm completely done, but I would say that for most part we're done.
All right, so just to clear this up, you compared gross elements to glasses and the fine elements for the decision to put on your glasses.
Yes.
So does that mean that fine elements must be worked on and obtained first and only then are the gross? Or first people need to work on their habits and then look within?
Right. In general, people recommend, there's no wrong or right way, but the reality of this is it's a lot easier to fix the gross elements. And usually the pattern is as you begin to fix like your gross elements in full, like totality, changing your patterns of sleep, changing your pattern of eating, changing especially pattern of expression. Those things contribute to like experiencing like, you know, a better balance with the fine elements, but on their own, progress is not perfect. So if I have to say 30% of your problems of disbalance come from not fixing the gross elements, and 60% is probably, or 70 or 2/3 maybe, will be a function of the fine elements. So in that particular sense, the effort is mostly in fixing the gross elements, but I guess the kind of reward comes with only fixing the fine elements. To a degree, this could be thought as a cake. So it's like a cake has a gross element, but in order to like wow the audience, and to put like, proper decoration on the cake and kind of like icing and stuff like that, this is what really kind of like makes the experience of the cake. The cake itself is kind of quite gross, but without all those like icings, experience of eating the cake is not the same, and it's totally different.
So for a person to be a successful trader, he needs to be function of both gross and fine elements. Just one of the two is not enough.
That's right. I was thinking about this, and people were saying is like what career advice you would give to people. And I read several interviews when people giving career advice. And I don't want to give you a career advice. I want to give you a life advice. Because if I give you just a career advice, whatever Warren Buffett inside you makes, Rasputin would easily spend. So this is kind of like, pointless to give people too much kind of career advice, because they have self-destructive tendencies that they don't realize. The problem, I guess, like the most important thing about fixing, like, the fine elements is the idea of the normal distribution. And this is like, an example I came up with maybe in the last several months. And the first time I came up with the example, I was like blown away myself. Imagine a highway with 2 lanes, and the left lane of the highway is closed. This is like a real example that happened to me over the summer. So left lane is closed, and traffic should merge, like the left and right lane should merge into 1 lane. And what should happen, or what we think should happen, is one car from the right goes in, then a car from the left lane goes in, then another car from the right lane goes straight, and then another car from the left. That's what should happen, supposedly, right, Mr.
In
Kevin?
theory, yeah.
Yeah, in theory. In practice, what happens is it looks somewhat haphazard and like, completely random. And the reality is that's normal, in the sense that if normal distribution is everywhere in our life, aggressive driving is normally distributed. So what happens is 2 standard deviation away aggressive drivers, which happens to be every 40 or 50 person that actually drives by, they don't have the time to patience to merge into the lane. They go straight into the emergency lane. The more aggressive drivers from the left lane cut off the defensive drivers from the right lane, so sometimes the cars merge 2, 3 at a time. Usually the pattern of 1 left, 1 right like stays, but not for long. Like sometimes people that are in the right lane don't give room for those on the left to yield, so 2, 3 cars from the right pass, and so forth. But this is something that you could obviously observe in your life. So the understanding here is that what I think should happen is actually abnormal, and what is happening is actually normal. And that's the normal distribution. And this is like a very, very fine point. Another example recently happened. So we have like an office manager, and the office manager complained about an employee that's no longer with the company, and how this person is like really kind of like a psychopath. And I started to think about this, and turns out that if a normal distribution is everywhere, psychopathy should be also normally distributed. And I said 2 standard deviation psychopaths should be every 40th or 50th person. And we have about 50 people working in the company, and the office manager regularly interacts with them. So it's normal to have 2 standard deviations with psychopaths. And the 2 standard deviation psychopaths are probably not psychopaths enough to end up in jail. That's probably 3 standard deviation way psychopaths. They're just here to torture you.
So 2 standard deviations make the cut.
Yeah, 2 standard deviations may not have even like a police record. So as I said, they're here to torture you. Your body is basically very bad with those small elements. So those fine elements on the distribution. That's what it really means. The fine element. To your body, if you expect your interaction with person to be normal, it's like expecting warm water. And if the interaction is away from your expectations, in the sense that like a room temperature water actually flows down from the faucet, and you're expecting warm water to like take a shower, tendency is to jump in to say that the water was ice cold. The water wasn't ice cold. Water was like 15 degrees centigrade. But the reality, if you expect the person to be normal, and he turns out to be 2 standard deviation psychopath, your experience will be very dramatic and your body will feel chills. You begin to look at the person's eyes and detect like dead eyes, and all those things are just unnecessary embellishments. So the reality of it is you're correct about many of the things that you're sensing. But those fine distributions, what is a 2 standard deviation, what is a 1 standard deviation, what is a 3 standard deviation, are very difficult for your body to detect. It just feels off. The tendency is people to say complete psychopath. There's no such thing as a complete psychopath. There's psychopaths with different standard deviations, and even if they have strong psychopathic tendencies with 2 standard deviations, they also psychopathy in terms of like their tendencies. They also normally distributed. So that complete psychopath actually varies. And sometimes he's like, 2 standard deviations good, and sometimes he's 2 standard deviations bad. And yes, our misunderstanding of those things. The interesting implication of the normal distribution, one of the most important things in order to fix the fine elements, is to understand that happiness is normally distributed around 0, which means in the long run, 50% of the time, you will be less than happy no matter what you do. I'll repeat that. 50% of the time, you'll be less than happy. It will take you some time. Sometimes a dramatic positive event could happen. It usually begins to wane within 90 days. And yes, my experiences, even dramatic events that are like extremely positive, would completely wear off within 5 to 7 years, or have a tendency to wear off. So even if you become a billionaire using the lottery, winning the lottery today, Mr. Kirchhoff, in 5 years, you'll be feeling exactly how you feel today. Or
Most likely less even, not even 5 years.
Yeah. But 90 days, for sure, things will begin to wear off. But we don't really know. So happiness is normally distributed. And it's impossible to be happy. So this is the cause of kind of like many of our fine elements disbalances. We correctly predict when something is going to make us happy right now, but we project infinitely that happiness into the future. And that's impossible. It would not happen.
So that's a fault in our own expectations.
Right. It has to do, I really thought about this. It has to do with kind of like certain things that are kind of like necessary. For example, your first language was Bulgarian, right?
Correct.
And then you kind of get the idea that you need to learn English if you want to have like, a good career potentially. So in the beginning of your life, maybe first 10 years, in one particular situation, you would describe everything in Bulgarian. But later on, second decade, when you became 20 years old, you would describe the same situation with using different language, different sounds, like, different words.
Correct,
because it's in English. We see that pattern of, let's say, in physics. So in the beginning, when you first study physics, you learn classical mechanics. And you study everything like kind of gravitational force or accelerations and so forth. And then when you finish studying that, and they'll say, okay, everything you studied about classical physics is incorrect. Now we're going to study theory of relativity. It's like a completely different. But you cannot learn theory of relativity first. You first need to learn classical mechanics. The error that comes is, again, we have mind-body perception. So mind and body perceive things. And first perception is a body perception. And the example here I have is when I see somebody that resembles my second cousin. My second cousin is a DJ. He's been like a DJ for all his life. And in order to kind of preserve his health, he doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, practically doesn't eat meat and doesn't drink coffee. So he's actually very healthy except for working late at night. And when I see somebody that resembles him, I expect him, similarly, that person not to drink, not to smoke, not to drink coffee, not to eat meat. But those people are different. So in that particular sense, we have a body-mind perception, and your body perception that kind of associate things with previous experiences comes first. And your mind perception, which is kind of function of like your really second decade in the world, your first decade in the world, your only body perception or mostly body perception. In the example here, Mr. Kirchhoff, I would, since I know Mr. Kirchhoff, I would say that Mr. Kirchhoff has like a fear of birds. And this is something that has happened in his life like when he was a child. His body perceives birds one way. His mind understands that birds are different than what the body suggests, but the body sensation is so strong. It kind of takes over the perception. So the mind is not strong enough. And this is not a flaw just with like Mr. Kirchhoff. All of us have that particular flaw. And understanding that those feelings, the body sensations that we feel, incorrect, it really takes a very, very long time. This occurs in stock trading. People look at patterns and say, this pattern, and take one pattern for one stock and put it to the other stock. And that's incorrect. This is a body perception that likes to find like a specific pattern, specific setups, and expect similar results.
So wait, you're trying to say that traders, depending on different setups, different stocks and different moments, they project what they experienced previously based on their body sensations.
That's right. This happens automatically. If you're not like one of the traders discovered like a day trading channel on YouTube, and they were trading like Amazon, QQQ, and then one day you're trading one like a lot smaller stock like Peloton. It's probably like a $5 billion company, and you have like Amazon, which is probably nearly $1 trillion, which is not $1 trillion. I said that's very wrong, because what happens is if you're trading those in and out, so you're trading Python and trading Amazon, you're gonna naturally project, your body would naturally project Python action into Amazon and Amazon price action into Python, because body is like basically really takes one experience and virtually projects it. So it's very dangerous to trade different symbols randomly. So the choice of the symbols that you should trade should behave the same way, because the price action of one stock, your body will naturally feel, will project it to the next. We see this with like our traders, like when they begin to trade something that's completely different. So many of the stocks, they could trade basically highly liquid, and they sit on the bid and in the offer. But in reality is like if you're trying to trade something that's very liquid, you cannot sit on the bid and the offer, because the bid and the offer are 1 cent apart. And it trades very differently. So if you're trading a stock that's basically bid-ask spread is 1%, you could get executed, and that could be a good trade because the value of the stock hasn't changed. It's just illiquid, and you're providing liquidity. But if you try to be 0.5% in Amazon down and 0.5% in Amazon up, like bid and offer, the odds are if you get executed, this is not a good trade. Because stock may, if you, for example, you hit your bid, stock may stay there for a while. It's not like the fair value of the stock is when you placed your order. So different. This is a very important. So you have some sort of pattern recognition, and you should just be aware that you're taking one price action into the other price action, and this comes naturally. But in reality, those things are quite different.
Is that what separates the successful trader from the one that fails? Not being able to realize that what he wants to do is over-reliance on body sensations, and what he must do is actually trust his expertise and professional mind.
Right. This is really going to be a lot easier with an example. So the example is something like this. One of the traders wanted to trade stocks, and I told him his name is Mr. Yanchev, and I said, Mr. Yanchev, I'll make your stock trade. So we started first with the ideas that it would feel like we are trying to go to Moscow, but we ended up in Istanbul. So the idea becomes like this. It turns out that a lot of day traders have a holding horizon of 1 day. So they usually buy a stock that's up, and up 5-10%, and they hold it for 1 day. This is a very well-known statistic. You could see it while using eToro. eToro has 36 million registered users and active users at 4 million, which basically some of those accounts are not funded, but the question is what happened to those people. Many of those accounts lost money, even though the market continues to go up. And the reason is because they usually buy stock that are up and hold them for 1 day, and they sell them. And that they do that 100 times and lose all their money. So the idea is we first started, we're going to short stocks that are up 10%. We started to short them pre-market. Turns out that this is not the best idea. So we started shorting them after the market opens. This produced better results, but still got clipped a few times. Then we moved the estimate to we're going to specialize in different industries. Some industries stocks could go up a lot, like biotech, technology, and stuff like that. So we're going to only short mostly stocks that are not in those sectors, and we're going to short them after 1 or 2 days. So we're looking for a particular pattern that's 1 or 2 days price action, and that actually produced interesting results. So it's we're looking for volume that's excess of 5 times the average daily volume. So we're looking to short stocks only that not only up at least 10% in the span of 2 days, but on volume that's 5 times the average daily volume. So all the market makers are short. So we're looking to short when the market makers are there, and produced decent results. But then I said to myself, Nikolai, in the long run, there are no short sellers. So the statistics say once in a while, maybe even after the strategy is up and running, we are going to face a disaster when the stock is like GME and we misclassify it, and it's going to double from our entry point, and we may not have a stop. So the reality is, the question is not necessarily mixing different things or finding different patterns. The question, it comes up to conscious separation from others. So in a sense, comes up to the decision, hey, If all your friends, Mr. Kirchhoff, and all your relatives tell you, Mr. Kirchhoff, you should go to the hospital or go to a rehab, do you trust them? And the answer is, you probably should. You probably should. If all your relatives, all your friends, close friends tell you, Mr. Kirchhoff, you should go to rehab, you should go. You should go. And the reality is we need to like look at an example and look at if this pattern has actually existed. And what we observe is there are no big short sellers. I mean, they're short sellers, but they go out of business. And in reality is when people make money, they make money kind of on the long side. So whatever short strategy you have, that's not going to work.
In the long run.
In the long run. And the reason and the evidence that is it doesn't exist. The error that comes up in trading, I could trace it back in myself to school, where I would basically solve an equation by myself. I would do an equation by myself. Everything I'll do myself. And it gives you the idea that you could actually do things by yourself. Nowadays, what I know, where I am, I'm a lot more concerned with what other people think. So when I take a look at the stock, I don't look at the pattern of the stock only, which may be significant. Some of those patterns are significant. They say different things. But I look at what analysts think. What percentage of the analysts are actually rating the stock a buy or strong buy? How many analysts have given updates to the stock? How has this recommendation changed over the last 3 to 5 years? And only then proceed with the stock. And sometimes you would have a different perception. For example, Southwest, LUV ticker, I was under the impression that this is a good stock. And I was like, maybe I'll buy some love stock because like usually a good stock. But you see the analyst recommendation, 60% of the analysts recommend it as a hold or sell. So clearly, if you come up with a valuation and you decide to buy that stock, you're going against the wisdom of those people. And yes, so the most important thing is to ask myself what other people think about those things, what other kind of perceptions are there. And the reason is because those are your glasses. Those are your glasses. So like, nobody fixes their life or their expectations or their experiences without the wisdom of others. It's the errors are basically too much. For example, here is what was the wife of Tom Brady?
I forgot her name.
Giselle
Yeah,
Butchen.
something.
Giselle Butchen,
Okay.
right. It's a very good example. Apologies to Ms. Butchen if we bring her here. Ms. Butchen clearly is a very good-looking woman, as evidenced by the fact that she's made a lot of money supermodeling. Clearly, early in her career, she had the idea to marry the best-looking guy. And that would be Leonardo DiCaprio. Turns out that best-looking guys are womanizers. Mr. DiCaprio comes from a bad family, and he's almost 50 years old and never dates a woman that's older than 25, and that's a known pattern now. After turning 25 and realizing this is not going to be her soulmate, she kind of flipped in the other direction and went to Tom Brady. So again, successful man, good-looking man, but more of a family person. Not understanding that she's Brazilian and he's American, totally different backgrounds. Clearly that marriage was very difficult, and about 15, 20 years later, she divorces him. So now she's going to a more interesting pattern. It's like, she's dating some guy that's Brazilian, some sort of a judo, also gets interested in sports. The only problem is that he's 10 years younger than her. and couples where the woman is older by the man by more than 4 years really don't happen. So in that particular sense, like you have what I call empirical volatility, empirical probability. So empirical probability says there's no couples like that. And I remember reading one like article that she's written, and she said like how she completely trusts him. And I ask myself, is that really common? Do women really trust completely their partners, their men? And the reality is they do not. So many of the things at the core of fixing those fine elements is the understanding of empirical probability, what has occurred and how relevant that is. Empirical probability is kind of like if you have a daughter, Mr. Kirchhoff, that she'll like the color pink. You don't need to worry about like, you know, if she's going to like it or not. You can just paint the walls pink and before she's born, she'll probably like it.
Yeah.
So yeah, really the understanding of what happens to me is not so unique and what has happened to other people and probability of all those things, how they're there. That's what fixes the fine element.
All this time I was wondering what should a person do to tune his fine elements.
Right. He should first of all listen to our podcast, Integrity of the Investment Vehicle. The idea goes something like this. It really, and I'm 50 years old now, and it becomes very clear what you like or the things that you like. Is usually could be something temporary. Something you could like particular girl, particular car, but for 5 to 7 years. Statistics say that every 5 to 7 years, if you're a man, you probably will change your best friends. You may change your even girlfriends. You may change your like workspace. You may change your environment. So there are a lot of things that change, and instead, you should focus statistically what is the empirical probability of what actually makes you happy. And the reality is what makes you happy is your interests, your talents. The only thing that fixes the fine elements is, I could virtually like quote it, I have it on my fridge. It's like something that I picked up maybe 10 years ago. It says, close my eyes and be so busy improving myself as to have no time to look at or criticize others. So we unnecessarily judge other people and misjudge them. We think they're either too good or too bad. And the reality, those people are neutral. So even if somebody is a 3 standard deviation psychopath, after some time you'll get used to that person. I was giving the office manager and said, like, imagine we have 50 people company and 49 of those people are like Jesus Christ, blessing you every morning, being always polite, and one person, instead of like, you know, have a blessed morning, says just good morning. After 3 months, you think that person is a psychopath.
Correct.
You adapt to environmental changes. What does not seem to change is your ability to to progress, to actually improve. So what really, this is like, I want to give another example that how incorrect people are. I was asking one of the traders and said, tell me what's important to you. And he said, I want to be a good trader. I took that as I want to be a 1% trader. He said, I want my wife to be happy with me. I took that as you want to be a 1% husband. And he said, like, I want to, like, you know, be a good father to my kid. And I said, that's great. That's great. I cannot tell you how incorrect that thinking is. I said, the idea that you be like a good father to your first kid without you coming from a, like, you know, very big family or studying psychology, child psychology as a master's degree is zero. You fuck it up. Like, you're not going to be above average father on your first child.
Best case average.
Yeah, best case average. Best case average. Second thing is, I don't know what kind of husband you are, but whatever husband you are, you vary. So you're normally distributed. Your kind of relationship is normally distributed around something. And your wife will tell you when you do things wrong, which will happen every 40 or 50 days. So something you do, it's basically 2 standard deviations away. And she will be very unhappy when you do that. And she may remind you for that for a long time on days that you're actually better. And when you do things well, she'll never tell you, good job. So your wife being happy with you, it's a deviation I have never seen. It's like I'm 50 years old, and when they ask people about how things at home, women give variations of 2 answers. Either things are good, or you're not going to believe what my husband did, Nikolai. I've never heard a woman describe her husband, oh, it was such a wonderful man. It's like, that would never happen. And since you're trying too hard, like this is carrying like 3 watermelons. And if you drop 1 watermelon, tendency is to drop them all. So it's like, you're going to focus so much time on like, trying to be a perfect dad, trying to be a perfect husband, and you invariably will fail at that.
And being a good trader.
And that would put a lot of pressure on you, or like make you unhappy. Your tolerance for pain, for discomfort, trading is going to be even lower, and you're not going to achieve that. So you could carry only 1 watermelon safely. Yes, it's multitasking. We want too much of things. And I'm not telling him to like be a bad father or a bad husband. It's just to have realistic expectations. And one of the traders came up and said to me, I'm still bothered. Like he said something to his kid, and kid got upset, and went into his room. And I said, do you think you did something that most men said something? You hit him, and you said something that most fathers potentially could say to his kids. And said, yeah. I said, if most kids are okay, your son will be okay too. No need to worry about that. Of course, you could have said something to drive him, I don't know, suicidal or something like that. But the reality is, kids have difficulty controlling their emotions. And it's like, ideally, of course, you could have predicted that what you said maybe is a little bit insensitive and stuff like that. But the reality, you're overreacting. And the reality is, we have like a very unrealistic expectations of how perfect we'll need to be. As a father, as traders, as husbands or boyfriends or something like that. And the reality is you'll make a mistake. And you should just accept it instead of shooting that perception. And really kind of prioritize, get your priorities straight. And like the first priority should be your improvement. Your improvement as a trader and stuff like that. Or whatever your goal should be, and all those other things you should shoot to be average.
Now I understand when you say that fine elements are coming from within.
Yes, fine elements.
There are no steps like with the gross elements. Track your sleep, be careful with your diet, things like that.
Yes, it's impossible. Fine elements come from like really correct priorities and realistic expectations. And the reality is you always have unrealistic expectations. And the thing is to like look around. And as I said, what is happening is probably normal. What you think should be happening is probably abnormal. So it's what you think should happen. You should think like should be always perfect, and the reality is it's a perceptual flaw of your body. Your body remembers being happy, and says, "Hey, maybe it's possible to always be happy," but the reality it's not possible. 50% of the time, you'll be less than happy. Body remembers like you making correct decisions, says, hey, maybe it's possible never to make a mistake. That's impossible. That's impossible. And yes, so it's like it basically really comes up to like, kind of like understanding and figuring out that even though your body reacts negatively to situation, the situation may not be so abnormal. May not be so abnormal. What do you say, Mr. Kirchhoff?
Well, just as our listeners, there's a lot for me to think about as well. Food for thought.
Yes, the most important thing is, I guess, realizing the essence of things. We are a being that's subject to our 4 billion years of evolution. You've gotten so many lucky breaks. And when I really kind of have difficult times accepting reality, I have one like neighbor, like I have a summer home, and one of the neighbors is like, the child is paraplegic. So he is confined to a wheelchair. He can't speak, and once in a while he kind of tries to like swim, I guess, in the pool a little bit. And I always kind of keep that example in my head whenever I feel urgency or some distress or negativity. I said, Nikolai, that could have been you. We always compare it to the guy that has a Lambo. And the guy that has a Lambo compares himself to the guy that has a jet. The guy that has a jet compares to himself to the guy that has a jumbo jet. The guy that has a jumbo jet compares himself to Elon Musk. And Elon Musk compares to himself to like guys that actually have decent families, and their kids don't try to change their last name because they hate him. We always look for the better side, how things could be better. And the difficulty is to acknowledge that a lot of the things have gone right. And the reason why I'm not paraplegic is because my mother has been careful when she was pregnant. She might have not been careful. Maybe some sort of like an accident would have happened, and you could easily end up paraplegic. And I never look at that kind of life. I always look 2 standard deviations positive from the current situations. I never look 2 standard deviations or further on the negative side. And this is what balances you. To always be fair. So it's like things could be going better, and that's true, practically all the time, but they could have been a lot worse. And that's what balances the negativity. That's what balances the negativity. That's the correct view. What happens is like, the fine elements are displaced because you're trying to make permanent something that's like temporary or subject to luck or difficult to achieve. It takes like, a long time. And we're not being fair. We're not being fair. And the idea of like, gratefulness for the where we are. And of course things could be better, but you would have, this place where you at under certain conditions from the past would have been something you would have kind of wanted to be with 2 or 3 or 5 standard deviations away. So if you're paraplegic, anything that's normal person, even like, without exceptional talents, would be something you would dream to be. And that could easily have happened. We're not being fair to life. We're not being fair to life. We really close our eyes to all those like negative outcomes that could have happened. And you only look to the positives. And this is not going to change. And this is like, some sort of a habit that needs to be done. Yes, so when things are bad, when things are distressed, always remember, things could be a lot worse. A lot worse. Unless Mr. Kirchhoff has any other questions.
No questions. I'm just thinking whether you had a type of thinking back when you were in the US or you obtained that.
No. It's probably impossible to get that kind of thing. Awareness is there. I remember especially when we were partying, so like I really thought about this. Like, so let's say that I probably had like, maybe deviation that's 1 in, 5,000 or 10,000 people in terms of like partying in New York. Then you meet somebody like Timmy, which probably has a standard deviation of maybe 1 in 50,000 to 100,000. And then you meet somebody like Wes, which has a standard deviation of 1 in a million. And I'm sure that there are other international kind of like, party people that kind of have standard deviations of 10 million. So it will require you to jet set to different world pretty often, to have a jet, maybe homes in different places and so forth. I'm sure there are people like that. I realized at the time that what was happening was abnormal, but that didn't stop me from actually wanting to be more than what I was. Wanting to be more than what I was. But
so you're saying that at the time you were realizing that this is abnormal.
yeah, I realized it's abnormal, but I still wanted more. The error comes up with this: if I have to go back, say all those people are not going to be in your life. It's like, all those things are just temporary things. This is all about fun, and there is no such thing as fun. And this is like the most important thing. It's like happiness is normally distributed. Once you get into this lifestyle, after 3 months, everything would seem normal, and you'll still be unhappy. And the reality is like how productive you are. And the reality is you're not productive. You're not productive. You're thinking about all this partying. So what you imagine is pleasure. I mean, this is what I said at one of the birthdays. Is like, I've heard it so many days. People say, wishing you love and happiness. And I said that at the birthday, is like, I cannot wish you love and happiness because there's no such thing as happiness. It's just an illusion. And if you fall in love, it's gonna end up only one way, with a broken heart and unpaid electricity bill.
That's actually true. You said that.
So like the only thing that matters is how productive you are, and you should keep track of that. How you sleep, like how often you kind of like train. Are you increasing your speed? Are you increasing your distance? Those are very kind of things that can be counted. But your lack of progress is something that has to do with fine elements. The idea of pursuing pleasure. Yes, there's no such thing as pleasure. There's no such thing as happiness. Your body would adjust. The only thing that's real is progress and getting better and satisfaction. It takes a while to realize that. But that's the only thing. That's the only thing that's real.
Thank you, Mr. Stoykov, for the, as usual, valuable information. I personally will have to go back, listen to this a couple of times, let it sink in my head.
Yes. I started saying something to me like, to help me. This is something going to be... we are under the illusion that fine elements could be fixed. Fine elements cannot be fixed permanently. This is like a kind of like a function of effort. 90 days after you stop putting efforts into those, your fine elements will be disbalanced. So this is an ongoing concern. So this is not something that like gross elements, you could get used to it very easily, but fine elements is always there. And one of the things that I always say to myself is, when I say, just remember, Nikolai, dopamine always comes with dopamine withdrawal. So dopamine always comes with the dopamine withdrawal. So don't go for the dopamine. Think very hard. Is what you're thinking is like, is that really possible? So people dream about Lambos and girls in bikini. How many people you see on the street with Lambos and girls in bikini?
Zero.
Zero. Empirical probability. You're not going to have it. You're not going to have it. Even if you have the money, your wife is not going to let you do it. Right. Dopamine comes with dopamine withdrawal all the time.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Stoykov. And thank you to our audience. Please like and subscribe, comment.
Right.
And see you on the next episode.
See you on the next episode.